Losing the operations center was particularly painful because our emergency storm plan centers on using this facility as our base of operations. We were forced to set up a makeshift control center in our main office downtown, on the south and relatively dry side of town. Trying to respond to this crisis without the resources provided by the operations center was extremely difficult, and this wasn't an ordinary crisis. It was a potential catastrophe. Normally, a storm affects just one of our services, and the other 3 departments rally in support. This time, we were in danger of losing all 4: electric, water, wastewater, and natural gas. Our workforce was stretched beyond its limits, the river kept rising, and the situation just got worse and worse.
After the storm came and everything subsided, early on Thursday morning, I rode out to the substation and noticed that water was already entering through the west end of our substation, coming up through the grass level. And so immediately told our supervisor, water's coming in, we need to get prepared. Feeling like we had adequate time to do what we needed to.
Our fight to maintain electric service captivated the public's attention. We purchased all of our electricity, and at the time, it was delivered to us at one point of delivery substation. If we were to lose this substation, our entire electric supply would be cut off.
And so we started trying to protect our control cabinets at our equipment. And then we realized the water level was really rising a lot faster rate than what we anticipated. And we said, we got to come up with another plan and try to back ourselves up into what's the minimum amount of things that we can protect to still keep the system operating.
We had no idea that the water would get as high as it did. That afternoon, I got a call from Janet Drennan that we had some help, or that to meet up with some trustees from the detention center over at the Pitt County Maintenance Yard to start sandbagging for use out at the substation. We met out there sometime Friday afternoon and sandbagged on into the night.
Despite a valiant, around-the-clock sandbagging effort by GUC employees, volunteers, and 100 prison inmates, we lost the battle.
Well, about 10 o'clock when the lights went out, and it really concerned us because we knew we had a lot of personnel over at the substation and we didn't know what had happened. And when the lights went off, it just got silent. And it really worried us because we didn't know what happened. And so we all stood around in a circle, held hands, and said a prayer. Well, it seemed like 30 minutes, but I know it couldn't have been about maybe 2 minutes. We heard Todd on the radio saying everything was all right and that nobody was hurt. So that was a great relief.
Floodwaters overtook the substation and our entire service area was abruptly in the dark Friday night. We could have just walked away and waited until the river receded, but we didn't. We had lost the battle, but not the war. Throughout this entire crisis, our battle cry was, "We're going to make it work."
We were leaving the substation that night, late Friday, and it was getting close to 11, 12 midnight. And it was an eerie feeling because everything was dark, everything was quiet, pitch black. You could see all the stars in the sky, and recall that people throughout all of Pitt County, or the area that we service, are without power, and what they might be going through. And we had earlier witnessed, people exiting the neighborhood close to us where their homes were being flooded. So we knew people were being impacted, not only from the water, but from the loss of electricity in a lot of ways. And, so we certainly wanted to get power back restored as quick as possible.
All day Saturday, our staff worked on a plan to restore power. The plan involved trying to re-energize one of the transformers by rerouting the power through a line 40 miles away, allowing the electricity to pass through the protective equipment in another town. It would be an electrical system with one protective switch 40 miles away with no backup. It was a high-stakes gamble that at worst could have destroyed the $2 million transformer, and repairs and replacement could have kept our community in the dark for at least a month. At best, it would be a patched-up substation with a tenuous connection. There were some tense moments, but miraculously, the plan worked. Against all odds, power had been restored, but there was no time for celebration. Now we had to make sure that those 115,000 volts had adequate clearance from the waters that hadn't crested yet. Power was restored Saturday night, but how long would it hold? Over the next few days, it was touch and go. This makeshift solution would work only if the water level stayed below the insulators on the 115 kV substation structure. Unfortunately, the river was still rising. It was an hour-by-hour drama. The community held its collective breath. We had employees in boats monitoring the water level, reporting how many inches of clearance we had. Something as minor as a boat wake or floating debris could have caused the whole system to go down. On Tuesday, the water came within 2.5 inches of the insulators, and we began warning the public to prepare, because we may have to pull the plug to save the equipment. Mercifully, the river finally crested on Tuesday, so our makeshift solution held. At the same time we had a crisis with electricity, we also had disaster looming at our water treatment plant. We were in danger of losing both electric and water service at the same time.
Well, on Friday, September the 17th, the flood waters were rising rapidly at the water treatment plant. It was threatening our critical equipment and jeopardizing our ability to produce safe drinking water. As a precautionary measure, we issued a boil water notice to all our customers, which lasted for 9 days, to boil all the water that they were going to consume. So many things were going on at that time, we had to rely on the sheer ingenuity of our employees to make things work.
You know, whatever problem came up, we addressed it. You know, nothing could wait. It had to be done, had to be taken care of right then. And you know, throughout the whole episode, we had to get creative in some areas, because we depend on gravity water flow to, like, for example, backwash our filters. And with water all around us, we didn't have that. So we had to wash the filters a new way. And the way we did that was we just turned the backwash pump on and let the water come up over top of the structure. And then we use sandbags to create a channel to direct the water off the side of the sand basins. So, you know, something, we didn't know if it'd work or not, but it did. So, you know, that was one way we got through the process without having to shut down the plant, because the filters, you know, usually you get 4 days out of the filters, and we were in day 5 or 6 before we did that. So that was something that worked, that we had never tried before.
As the river and floodwaters kept rising, we mobilized every available employee to sandbag, about 25,000 sandbags in all. For 5 days, Greenview Utilities employees worked around the clock, sandbagging generators, transformers, electrical panels, and other equipment critical to the treatment process. Outside the plant was another story, with workers strapping on life jackets to battle waist-deep water, struggling to sandbag to levels of 5 feet and higher. It was one crisis after another. GUC pumps water from the Tar River, and at one point, power to those submerged pumps had to be shut off to protect them from long-term damage. For a time, we had to rely on the 40 million gallons of raw water stored in our reservoir. That's only a 2-day supply. We faced the ironic situation of not having enough water to treat in the middle of a flood. At times, the water treatment plant couldn't keep up with the demand. There were breaks all over the system, and the main pumps were down. Water pressure dropped, and customers had only a trickle of water. The health department closed restaurants. The hospital used water from its swimming pool. We set up filling stations throughout the city for people to come and fill receptacles at our deep wells. By Saturday, the only way in or out of the water treatment plant was by helicopter or boat. Most employees slept right on the floor in sleeping bags. Even after the river crested, water quality continued to be a concern for many weeks following the crisis. The boil water notice was lifted on September 27th, but the public had to be reassured that the water was in fact safe to drink.